In the mountains of northern Japan there was a forest people avoided after sunset, not because of ghosts, but because the forest remembered things. At least, that's what the old villagers used to say. And the only person who seemed to understand it was a quiet man named Renji Sato. Renji lived alone in a small wooden house at the edge of the forest. At 35, he worked as a forest ranger, walking the same winding trails every day, checking for fallen trees, injured animals, and careless hikers. He preferred the silence of the woods to the noise of people. The forest never asked questions, it never judged, it simply listened. Renji liked that. One autumn morning, while mist still clung to the trees, Renji found someone sitting on a fallen log near the deeper part of the forest. A woman. She was sketching something in a notebook. Her long coat was dusted with leaves and her black hair moved slightly in the cold wind. She looked up when she heard his footsteps. "Oh, sorry," she said softly. "Am I not supposed to be here?" Renji studied her carefully. "This trail is closed." Her eyes widened. "Ah, I didn't see a sign. There was one." She laughed awkwardly. "I must have missed it." Renji sighed quietly. "People usually do." He waited a moment expecting her to leave, but she didn't. Instead she asked, "Do you work here?" "Yes," she smiled. "Then you're lucky," Renji frowned. "Why?" "Because you get to hear the forest." He looked confused. "Hear it?" She tapped her notebook. "Most people only see trees." Her voice was calm, almost dreamy, but forests talk, just very slowly. Her name was Yuna Ishikawa. She was a botanical illustrator studying old forests and the strange patterns plants formed when humans left them alone for long enough. She came back the next day, and the day after that. Renji should have stopped her. The deeper areas were restricted for a reason, but strangely, he didn't. Maybe because Yuna didn't disturb anything. She walked gently, spoke quietly, listened carefully, almost like she belonged there. They started walking together sometimes. Renji showed her hidden streams, ancient cedar trees, places where sunlight barely touched the ground. In return, Yuna showed him something he had never noticed before. Life, the small things, fungi growing like tiny cities, flowers blooming in impossible cracks, the way certain trees leaned toward each other like old friends. "You've lived here for years," she told him once. "But you never really looked." Renji shrugged. "I was working." She smiled. "You were surviving." Winter came early that year. Snow covered the forest trails, turning everything silent and white. One evening, Yuna visited Renji's cabin with a bottle of cheap sake. "Live like a ghost," she said while looking around the nearly empty room. Renji poured 2 cups. "Ghosts don't pay taxes." She laughed. It was the kind of laugh that filled the entire room. For a moment, Renji realized something strange. The cabin didn't feel empty anymore. As the months passed, something complicated began to grow between them. Not sudden, not simple. They never talked about love, but sometimes their hands brushed while walking. Sometimes they sat too close near the fireplace. Sometimes their silence felt heavier than words, and sometimes Renji noticed sadness in Yuna's eyes that didn't belong to the present moment. One night, during a heavy snowfall, Renji finally asked, "Why do you study forests like this?" Yuna stared at the fire. "Because forests remember things." Renji raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like a fairy tale." She shook her head. "No." Her voice was softer now. "My husband died 3 years ago." The words hung in the air. He was a climber. He fell during an expedition. Renji didn't know what to say. Yuna continued quietly. "When I visited the mountain where he died, I realized something strange. What the forest there felt. Different." She looked up at him. Like it knew. Renji frowned slightly. "That's impossible." "Maybe." She smiled sadly. "But grief makes you listen to impossible things." After that night, the distance between them grew smaller and more dangerous, because loving someone who still carried another person's memory was never simple. Renji knew it. Yuna knew it too, but neither of them stopped. Spring arrived. Cherry blossoms appeared in the lower valleys. One evening, while watching the sunset from a hill above the forest, Yuna said something unexpected. "I'm leaving soon." Renji's chest tightened. "For where?" "Another forest." "In Hokkaido for work." "Yes," but her voice lacked excitement. Renji looked away. "You just got here." Sometimes people only stay long enough to hear what they needed. The wind moved gently through the trees. Renji finally asked the question he had been avoiding. "Was I just part of the forest to you?" Yuna looked hurt. "Is that what you think?" "I don't know what to think." Her voice trembled slightly. "I came here to escape memories, and instead I found new ones." Renji didn't respond, but the silence between them said too much. The misunderstanding grew quietly after that. Renji believed he was only a temporary distraction. Yuna believed Renji would never accept loving someone who still loved a dead man. Neither of them spoke the truth. On Yuna's final day, the forest was strangely quiet. They walked their usual trail without speaking much. When they reached the old cedar tree where they first met, Yuna stopped. "I never meant to hurt you," she said softly. Renji replied, "You didn't," but his voice sounded distant. She stepped closer. "Renji, loving someone after loss isn't betrayal." He looked at the ground. "Then why does it feel like it?" Yuna's eyes filled with tears. "Because grief doesn't disappear. It just makes room." Renji finally looked at her. For a moment it felt like he might say something important, something honest, but instead he whispered, "Maybe you should go." The words hurt both of them, but neither took them back. Yuna left the forest the next morning without another goodbye. Years passed. Renji continued working as a ranger. The forest remained quiet, but sometimes, when wind moved through the cedar trees, he heard something strange. Not words, not voices, just memories. Of laughter, of footsteps, of a woman sketching quietly on a fallen log. And sometimes he wondered if forests really did remember things, because even after she was gone, every path in the woods still seemed to lead back to her.